Okay, we are now live.
Okay. So, Mr. Brown, this is the regular monthly meeting of the Amity Regional Board of Education Finance Committee. Today is August 16th, 2021. And the first item on the agenda is a discussion and possible action on minutes. That's item 2. And the Finance Committee meeting, if you remember back that far, June 14th, 2021. And I will move acceptance of the minutes of June 14th, 2021 meeting as presented. Anybody want to second that?
I would.
You can second it.
I would second it.
Any discussion, corrections, adjustments, etc.? All right, so let's see now. I'm the only one who was there. It's here. Oh,
Chris is not.
Oh, there it is. Is that him?
Yep, Mr. Brown, you're still muted, and Mr. Giglietti started the meeting, and I'm sure that once we get through the minutes, he will be happy to turn it over to you, and you can unmute.
Okay, so I don't really think we have a quorum here to approve the minutes, but the vote will be obviously one to. Well, actually, you know, Joe, I think even though you weren't here, you can still vote in favor. Right? So all those in favor of the minutes of the June 14th meeting, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And Chris is voting also.
And Chris too? Okay. Okay. It's all you.
There we go. All right, thanks so much. Sorry about that. I had a little connection problem on this end. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. And the next item on the agenda after the minutes, I think, was public comment, correct?
That is correct.
Right. Do we have, oh, we do? Do we have people there?
Any comment? No?
No.
Okay. And I don't believe we received any by email either, correct? Okay. So no public comment.
Okay, so then we'll move on to the next item, which I think is about the fund balance, I believe. I have to pull up the agenda in front of me. Hold on. Oh, just the next item then.
Okay, so this is the presentation of the 22-23 budget calendar.
So this is
the calendar.
This is just informational at this point, so that you know we start the budget process as soon as we come back. The administrators are all here in September, and the important dates along the way. Really, for the Finance Committee, it picks up in January with presentations from the superintendent, opportunities for workshops throughout January, February. Superintendent and I will go to each of the town finance committees, and by March 1st, the Finance Committee needs to make a recommendation to the board, and the board votes in early March. The dates of the referendum, public meeting is Monday, May 2nd, and the referendum is Tuesday, May 3rd.
And one of the things that I would just comment on is that in my evaluation, not from this year, but from the year before, the board had asked me to include more of our central office administrators and school administrators in giving sort of mini presentations on their budgets as well. So we did that this year at board meetings from October through December. And so it would be the intent to do that again. Last year worked well because we were having meetings every 2 weeks because of COVID. So we were able to sort of partner those. This year, they may end up being some special meetings, but we'll make sure that those are available. So I would encourage our town members, we'll make sure that you're aware of those. And even if you are unable to attend in person, you would be able to hear and see those kind of mini presentations that should sort of show how the bigger piece of the budget gets constructed.
Okay, so anything else there, but besides the calendar, any comments, or should we move on to number 5?
Number 5.
So we don't have to approve the calendar, right?
No.
So if we move on to number 5, which is what, reoccurring, recurring items, non-reoccurring items, balances.
The annual report on the capital and non-reoccurring account, it's just required by statute that we provide the balance as of June 30th. We show what it was at June 30th of last year, everything that was appropriated, bonded for, and put into the fund, what's been spent year to date, and what is balance is left on the projects.
Okay, so the second part, after the 321.47. So you've got, these are projects that are coming up, I'm assuming?
No, they are in progress.
They're all in progress, okay.
Sure.
The undesignated, does that mean that's money that's not committed yet to anything?
Correct.
Okay. So at this point, you got 332,587.32 that you haven't committed to any project yet. Bond premium for debt service, okay. All right. So you're sitting with 332,587.32 not committed.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Where do you go? What is he, swimming now? There it is.
Did you guys, so there's just over 300,000, right? That's not assigned anything, that's left over from a number of areas, right? From bonds, from leftover projects, etc. Yeah. And
Still contingency funds that are part of the projects that we're actually still working on.
Okay.
so then the next item, if we can move on from that was the presentation, right? That's just almost perfunctory that we need that. And then if we move on to item number 6, which is discussion and possible action of appropriate funds to capital and non-recurring, which is, I think, page 16.
There was a new memo distributed at the meeting, and Chris, you should have got it by email.
Oh, there was. I did see that. Yep, right before.
And really what that memo did different from the memo in the packet is kind of categorize the projects to maybe help flow the discussion some. But the state allowed the regional school districts to appropriate 2% now of the operating budget, which has been in effect for other boards of education since a few years ago, recognizing that school districts may have money left at the end of the year and do have capital projects. Because of the fund balance that we have, I am recommending that we put aside the full 2%. This will do a lot as far as avoiding future budget increases, really lowering what amount is in the operating budget for capital projects. Can help us avoid a bond plan for, I believe, 2024, and can help with when our long-term debt will drop in 2025. So if this really takes some projects from the 23-24 years of the capital plan. So really kind of could buy us some time until we get there. If those years are leaner and we don't have funds to put aside and we have to put something back into the operating budget, it would come at a time when debt service is dropping off. So the impact to taxpayers would be lessened. You can see on the table that there's a list of projects. Almost all of these have been on the capital plan. Some of them are new, as you know, the capital plan is fluid. So I've categorized them in groups. The total projects that we're considering is over the 2%. So obviously we need to back down to the 2%, and you can see where it kind of backed out or adjusted a number to get to the 2%. what we're asking is that the boards appropriate, and you're not required to designate when you put it into the capital reserve, but certainly it is something that the boards have been comfortable doing. And designating by category, because that gives us the flexibility to address the items that are most in need. And you can see the size of them, they'll go out to bid. So these are our best estimates at this time. So if prices were to be better and we could do one of the projects that we didn't think we could, then we have that flexibility to categorize it by an appropriation for buildings and grounds or appropriation for equipment. There are a couple things here that could possibly be eligible for other funds. We've applied for a security grant. We have the current bond project going on that's not finished. When that's done, if there's any money left, there's a few things that might qualify for those expenses. So that's why we're asking for that flexibility of the designation by category.
And, you know, we came to AFC last year and asked for a set aside for the roof projects, thinking we were going to have to go out and bond, and we gave, and you graciously allowed the set aside of about $495,000. Since then, Mr. Martoni has been working with our roofing contractors, and we've been able to make most of the repairs for about $405,000. So we were, I point that out to sort of reassure AFC that when we make these estimates, we really are putting the money exactly right back to the project that was designated for, and we're hopefully doing it in such a way that, as Ms. Loomis mentioned, it will prevent future bonding efforts, and it will also lower our overall operating budget for the next couple of years because we won't have to put in line items for capital improvements.
Is there a deadline on this? In other words, would it be possible? I mean, I was at a wedding this weekend, so I didn't get to this until this morning. And a lot of emails being, needless to say, there's a lot of interest in this and back and forth. Is there any, does it have to be done at this meeting? Or can it be done at the next, could we table it for the next meeting? This question was asked of me.
It can be, it has to be done before we close the audit. You know, the auditors come out in early September really to do all their field work. So we could have that answer in September's meeting then. I
mean, Sharon's not here. And again, there was a lot of, I guess, Jim Zioli spoke to Beth, who spoke to me, and I don't think spoke to Paula Francesco, but they don't seem to be in favor of 2%, to be honest with you. And I don't know about it either, but I just wondering if we had more time on this, we could understand a little better. I looked at the stuff that was out that was highlighted in yellow. Of course, I had to check it off. You know, a lot of these trials, a bunch of projects go out into 2023, 24, 2024, 25, 2025, 26. So there's money that's out 3 years from now. So I don't know that we should be, you know, we can always appropriate 1% the following year too. And so I don't know. For me, I'd like to have a little bit more time with this. Like I said, I just started looking at it today. So.
I mean, I'm hearing that most of us are not over the 2%. I think, again, the over budgeting, as we discussed, the budget could have been cut accordingly based on what Orange had calculated. That didn't happen. I mean, my calculation here, it looks like the surplus before any transfer account money, it's 6%. I mean, how do we feel about a 6% surplus here? That seems a little bit excessive. And I get it, but then we never seem to be able to cut the budget down to where just an orange, where a reasonable amount needs to be. And then every year you say, no, we can't cut, we need it. And then you're at a 6% surplus. Something's not right here. And I understand it, and it's happening year after year. And just because the state of Connecticut approved 2% doesn't mean we need to automatically do that. I think, and I understand, I spoke to John about this. I get having the money would bring our borrowing costs down for sure. So half of me says I'd like to do that, but the other half is like, you know what, we're overtaxing taxpayers here. and it's continuous, and now it's becoming a little bit excessive in my mind. And you know, when we look at this, it's all about the numbers here. Something's not right. The medical account's over $1 million. Something is not right here, and you never seem to be able to cut the budget. So I get it, but at the end of the day, we need to give and take a little. We want to take it, keep continuing to take it. Getting a little bit ticked off about what's happening here. So our vote is, I know we're the AMC, means something, but at the end of the day, it's up to the Board of Ed to make their determination, and they always seem to approve things. So, but you guys do a great job. It's just the budgeting seems to be off year after year, and a 6% surplus in my mind is excessive. That's all.
Well, and to your point, funds, we would be able to at least identify a certain percentage of the budget that could be reduced because it wouldn't be part of the capital operating.
But that doesn't seem to happen. I understand you mean well, but it doesn't seem to happen year after year. It just, for whatever the reason, and the budgeting, maybe the budgeting, your expenses are good, you guys are under control, but we're over budgeting here. We don't need to over budget by 6%. 1 or 2%, fine, we're at 6 now, before the 1% which we've graciously granted to the administration, but I think 2% is a little bit excessive. 3 selectmen are not in favor at this point. I'm not sure how.
I can't speak for. I can't speak.
Yeah, I'm saying in general we're hearing, you know, from obviously our board, for Jim. So,
well, what strikes me, what Joe's talking about a little further, last year when we were working on the budget in January, February, it was getting testy. We were reading in the paper about cutting positions, and the parents were up in arms. They were going to come in, and it was a mess. I mean, we were ready to go to the floor with this thing, and then suddenly you guys found it and brought it way down, brought the increase down to 1 point. I don't remember the numbers that well, but you brought it down to a reasonable amount that we were all able to vote for it, and everything was fine. And then the year ends, and now we've got this huge surplus again. You know, I mean. We were gonna battle over this thing, and yet you're sitting with a huge surplus again. To the point where everybody got fired up that teachers were going to be laid off and all this, and here we are again.
So hold on a second. There's been 18 months of COVID that's wrecked everybody's plans for what's going on with the school. We're doing week by week responses for what we're able to do at the schools this past year. We don't have. Our staff is not going to the doctor for annual checkups. So we've got $1 million surplus coming just from the medical stuff. So I don't think it's fair to say, oh, this is the normal surplus problem at Amity. I mean, we weren't serving lunches this year. We had a truncated year. We had kids coming in 2 days a week instead of 5. I mean, that wreaks havoc on any kind of a budget that you're going to try to plan. Right?
Every single activity where after something was done virtually because they were either learning from home. You weren't allowed to share materials and supplies. So I'm pretty sure every one of our supply lines ended up being in the black because we didn't buy anything. We had athletic programs that we budgeted to operate that never did, which is a significant cost. Field trips, any of our extracurricular activities. I mean, I would, agree with Mr. Brow's assessment that we were looking at a situation that is unprecedented. And last year, at this time of the year, we were planning to start the 21-22 school year as if we were operating normally. And guess what? We won't be. So we're gonna have another year where we don't quite anticipate what is exactly gonna happen. So I would argue that this is not a matter of budgeting. It is a matter of the situation that schools are operating in. And when you have a school district that's 2,300 compared to a school district of 350, any differences is going to be that more exponentially magnified. And when you look at a school district that is a middle and high school where your average cost per pupil is already larger because of the programs that we offer, it is going to be magnified. And you cannot compare us to elementary districts, who, by the way, can all hold back 2% because they are town school districts.
So I was also thinking about it, and one of the things I kind of in mind the question was, could we isolate, what were the things that actually turned out? All these explanations sound great, people want to look at it. it would be useful to kind of have a sense as to why the 6% surplus happened. And if we could know that, like, that would make it easier for us to kind of see what that source was. I wasn't sure, reading the report, I found it, but maybe it was already there.
It's in two places, so it'll be in the report, the monthly, the end of year report for fiscal year 21, which ended June 30th. And then at the end of the current year's report, there's analysis of the past 3 years, including fiscal year 21. The sources of the fund balance and then the proposed uses. But it is itemized by object code in there where the surplus is generated from.
But would there be any easy to understand the sense of where the surplus will be? I think just the buckets that you mentioned seem very reasonable and easy to understand. So
with many of those, like for instance, supplies, there's $121,000 left on the supply line. And you know, I give kudos to our teachers because they just didn't go out and spend every last penny that they had. And every day, every week they're planning, you don't know what the next week is going to be like. So everybody was just bracing for what is coming next and just ordering what you know you're going to use and what situation you're dealing with. So they're very, you know, judicious in that way and taking care of the money and not just spending it all.
Certainly medical, our self-funded medical came in again, and it's around 75% throughout the year. We have been monitoring it, and it was more like in the high 80s until sort of as we approach those last months of school. But I will also encourage you to look at what the report is right now, because we're already over 100% because we have reopened some of the medical procedures and things that are happening amongst our staff. And so in the year that we decided to reduce the reserve balance for that, which I'm still going to stand behind as being a good decision that we made, we are also in, for the first time in a while, going over 100% in our medical costs. So, you know, I think that's a perfect reflection of what was last year and what we might be looking at this year.
Budget issue aside, that's not what we were talking about. We're talking about the 1% and 2%. And at this point, I could say that based on all the emails that got thrown around and back and forth, and talking, Beth called me and she never does. She originally said nothing. And then I don't know what Jim is saying, 1%. So it's up to you. If you want to vote, I'll say this right now. If you want to vote on it tonight, I'm not voting for 2%. So I don't know what you want. If you want to extend it another month, and so everybody has more time to look at this and decide what they want to do. But the noise out there from the selectmen is not in favor of 2%.
Well, let's say this. Is it we've been talking about 1% for a long time, right? We've been talking about for a couple of years, and a few years ago we did have Jim and Beth and everybody come out, and they were against it that year. I think we've been continuing to talk about it. I think it's something that people, I agree that 2% is a little bit of a new thing because the law just changed. Is it something that you're willing to support 1% at this time, and we can just be done with it and call it a 1% and then leave it at that?
In light of their 332,000, which as Dr. Byers said, could be used for other projects, but there's also many projects that are in yellow that are in 2 years from now, so you're not going to be facing those. So yeah, I would be, based on what I heard and based on what I see, I would be willing to go with 1%.
Yeah, I'm going with 1%.
Okay. Okay, so let me do this. Can I get a motion to act on this for 1%, and let's see what the vote looks like. Would anybody make that motion? Or I can. Go get the wording. It's like 14 or page, is it 18 or 16?
Mr. Giglia, up at the top, it's 507,844. And then if you use the motion at the bottom of that page, that'll put it all together.
Let's see what it is. I'll make a motion and move to recommend to the Amity Board of Education that we approve an appropriation of 1%, totaling $507,844 to go into the capital non-recurring fund.
I'll second that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, I'll call the vote, or Dr. Byers, would you collect the vote?
I think with just you there, we can do an all in favor, and then I just have to see your
okay.
in the screen.
I'll put my hand up. All right, thanks. So I'll call those vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Okay.
Roger. Everybody okay with that?
I think that's reasonable, and I think it's fair, and I think it gives some support back. I know the towns are counting on some of this money. I think this is more than they were probably counting on, and I think we're willing to be flexible. I'm just trying to make it so we don't waste more money on more bonding, right? That's my goal. If we've got a roof project, if we can save up for it over a couple of years, you know, then we don't have to bond for it. We save ourselves $70K off the top of it. And the way we've been running these projects, there's a little bit of money left over. It fixes another air handler, you know, at the end or something like that. So we're running things pretty tight. I don't feel like we're wasting money, but again, I know we'll have this discussion around budget time as well. But it is an unprecedented year that we've been through, 2 years really, at this point.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for the support. So can we, what's that? Sorry?
Number 7.
Oh. So move on to 7.
Yes.
Sure.
So discussion of both the monthly financials for fiscal year 2021 and then also the start of 21-22.
So on page 22 starts the discussion of where the surplus and how the accounts ended. This will be adjusted. This reflected 2% set aside. You can see revenues were over for the year by $236,000. That's largely from the excess cost grant. Students that were budgeted for but had high costs were reimbursed from the state. The medical, you can see, as Dr. Byers mentioned before, came in at 75.8%. Again, I do remind you, being self-insured, that money does stay with us. If we were fully insured, we would have paid our full premium to Anthem, and that would have been profit for Anthem. So being fully insured is a benefit to the district and to the taxpayers.
Sure, can I ask you a quick question on this?
Sure.
So what obviously the calculation for a teacher, for example, does it start July 1? Does it restart July 1?
Yes.
Which would explain probably why you had such a big influx in July of.
But larger than I've seen in 5 years.
Yeah, that's huge. I saw that. Okay. So let's see what happens in August.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You'll see that areas like transportation, 488,000 between special ed needs, late buses, athletics, field trips, things that change. Rentals were favorable. Tuition, again, special ed, we know, is very much in flux month to month. Utilities were down. Our buildings were not used in the evenings, and even though we had to change adjustments, we really didn't know how that was going to impact us, but utilities were also under budget. As I mentioned, the instructional supplies were down 121,000. Maintenance supplies down 70,000. Many of the cleaning costs went to COVID accounts. Dues and fees and travel were all down. Staff just didn't go out of the district much physically, so there was not those costs to account for. Then we have the Excel version of that, the reports from units. So that does summarize at the end. You know, we did use all of our contingency accounts, and I do note at the end of the COVID section on page 32 that we applied on for our ESSER 3 grant last week. We filed it and we were approved. That has restrictions attached to it as to what the money can be spent for from the State Department of Education. So we are, we have addressed those needs that they requested to address. So if anybody doesn't have any questions on 2021, I'll go on to 21-22.
And we will update this to reflect the 1% holdback as opposed to the 2%, and you'll have that at the next meeting.
So right now,
I don't mean to explode on the face here, but I just wanted to, at a very high level, apart from the medical and the supply stuff that we talked about, like what are the things that would be particular to this COVID year that would be just so that I have a quick sense of which of these things will not be.
well, honestly, everything in the budget would have been affected by how we operated.
Okay.
You know, we had different things we rented that we never rented before, things we didn't rent that we did. Everything changed from how we operated. And then throughout the year, there were a couple of ESSER grants. So as we applied for those, some of those costs that we weren't expecting, we were able to then put towards those grants, which is great. It didn't come from the operating budget, but it does leave, you know, we held almost $1 million from everyone's accounts at the beginning of the year, not knowing what we were going to find and not having grant money in hand at the beginning of the year. We never returned that money to their accounts because we were not sure up until, you know, school wasn't ready to end. So, you know, between holding aside $1 million from their account and having some grant funds available, and then these other situations with insurance. Really.
So we could say that the 6%, significant part of that 6% surplus is mostly because of the COVID.
Yeah. Yes.
That's kind of what I'm trying to get to.
You figure 1% is just on bus transportation alone for not having athletic trips and after-school activities and field trips. And that would not be normal. I mean, in a normal year, we will go right down to 0 with our transportation because we use all of it because we anticipate all of those things happening. So there were some fairly significant things. Professional development and learning. I mean, when you can do every single professional development through a Zoom meeting and you don't have to travel and you don't have to pay the expense or of having the expense of having presenters come to you, it significantly changes how you operate. And so almost everything had an impact. And when we started the year, as Ms. Lima said, we set aside money because we knew there were things that we were going to have to do, like renting a tent for prom and graduation and all of that. So we set that money aside, and not knowing that the federal government over the course of the year was going to give us not 1, not 2, but 3 grants to be able to address these things. But then at the end of the year, you're left with all this money that you set aside because you knew you were going to have to do things that now you can use the grants for. So it's a combination of all of those coming together that results in the surplus that we have.
Okay, so 22, and obviously very preliminary. We're still hiring people. So there's no adjustments made for salaries at this point. We will do that usually probably by the October meeting. In revenue, the only change is 1 less tuition student than budgeted, so that's down 17,000 plus. In expenses, it is favorable right now. That is mainly special ed, and again, you know, that changes month to month. You will see on page 91 that the claims for the month of July were 530,000. The budget is based on a 5-year average, so you can see that that is significantly over. So right now, if every other month were to be on budget, we'd be at 100, almost 104% of budget, and be dipping into the reserve. So that's really the, you know, only forecasting right now for 21-22.
Any other questions or comments on those? We move on to transfers under 3,000.
So for the new year, on page 169, there was one transfer under 3,000 for $400.
Any questions there with anyone? We'll move on to budget, topic number 9, discussion possible action on the budget transfers over 3,000. I think there's a capital change order there on page 170.
The first change order is, I just missed when we approved the $11,000 change order for the electrical conduits on the field. So we're just asking to bring that up to the full amount of the change order. Change order 2 was one of the parts. As you know, probably there's a lot of issues in the supply chain, and many things are back ordered or not available. So there was one air handler part that was not available. They had to get a different model, and there was an increased cost of $1,886. And then paving change order, we had brought this in June and said that we were going to work with the paving contractor who had won the bid for the parking lot to repave the area where the tent was put, since there was about 26 holes in the pavement after the tent was taken out. And the parking lot near in front of the field house was cleared and paved. So what you have there are both recommendations to approve the change orders and to approve the budget transfers for those. Those are all from the capital projects. It would come from the capital contingency account.
It's listed on the agenda as one item, so I think you could do them as one item for motion.
I will make a motion that the Amity Finance Committee recommend the Amity Board of Education approve the change orders as listed on pages 170 through 173. I'll read off the individual amounts just so you're clear. The first is $556. The second is $1,886. Third is $26,595. And the fourth is $13,950.
Second that.
Would you like to approve the change order?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The change orders and the transfers to go with them, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the field looks good. The paving looks good. There were a number of big holes over there that needed to be fixed, and it'll look better. It already looks better because it's been done. I think that between the paving and the conduit, and the field looks great. We were up there on Wednesday night for facilities. It's a really nice addition to the school. Any discussion on that motion to approve those items and the change orders and the transfers that go with them? Nope. Okay.
That was there. Is that something that like was special?
So we had to put in place a rather large tent, which is where we held prom and then had our outdoor theater production. Actually, it was 4 tents, and to secure the tents in the parking lot, they had to drill through the pavement and put in holes in the pavement. And we had just finished paving that area last year. So we just repaired all of the new pavement so that it's all filled in now.
I figured.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the change orders and the transfers that go with them, say aye. Aye.
Then we have one change order for the new fiscal year out of the operating budget, and that's to cover a leave of absence instead of coming from a salary account. We are contracting with an independent contractor to cover the leave of absence. So we're asking to move from the salary line to the professional services line $43,580.
I will recommend that the Amity Board of Education approve the line item transfer in the amount of $43,582.
Question.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rouse.
And item C under there is the final budget transfers for 2021. In June, the board gives approval to balance out all the accounts, which may be over $3,000. If you see on page 179, it starts the end of year transfers, and really the pages before you saw month to month, but the page 179 starts the end of year transfers because we can't close the year with any account in a deficit. So it's largely salary accounts, so you'll see that we shore those up once a year.
Any questions there, or should we move on to the bond report?
Okay, so you have a page in your packet on 181 that just shows the current bond that we took out in 2020, how it's being spent down, the bills that are getting paid by the project that's happening. This is through, I believe, the end of August 2nd, it's through. So large portion of the field is done. Large portion of the HVAC is done. The roof is getting near completion. We haven't been billed for that yet. And the paving is mostly done, just some line striping to address. The main open project on the bond money that we took out in 2020 is the acoustical project at the middle schools, which we anticipate going out to bid for shortly.
And then the only other thing we wanted to make AFC aware of is part of the ARC ESSER funding. We've designated the construction of 3 outdoor classroom spaces, so essentially 1 at each of the schools. So this won't actually come through our operational budget, but it will end up probably being a contract over $35,000. So we would end up bringing it to you anyway. So we just didn't want to do that without giving you a heads up first. It's not a project that we're looking to do immediately because the cost of construction materials and building is so high right now. We have 2 years to spend that funding, so we can have the flexibility to wait until that cost does come down. We'll probably have to work with an architect to get some design for it. We want to make sure it's Wi-Fi accessible, so that way we can actually use it with our one-to-one devices. So it's likely something that we'll look at in spring and summer of next year. Assuming that we see the change in construction. But we just wanted to make sure that you had that knowledge before we brought the contracts to you.
We also talked about that at facilities, how it's been some of the outdoor space that they've been doing during COVID has been nice because it gives kids a chance to be outside without their masks on. And I think there's a continued advantage to having that, and using these funds that are provided from the grants would be able to build some nice outdoor space that we can use in the future and keep going. So it seems like a nice addition to each of the schools. So that was the last item. Any new business or any other items? I want to keep us on as well. Anything else? Otherwise, we can entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. All right. Hearing nothing else, then I'll call that motion. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting at 6:19, say aye. right.
Is
Thank you
everybody
so
on?
much. What's that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Brown.
guys. Thanks so much. See you guys soon. I'll be back soon. I'll say hi to Mickey Mouse for you.